Music continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Danny Laurel. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. Banks' credit growth further slowed to a 21-month low in the month of September. Data from the Bangko Sentral shows that outstanding loans from universal and commercial banks stood at 11.17 trillion pesos. That's a year-on-year growth of 6.5%, a slowdown from the 7.2% in the month of August. This marks the sixth straight month that loan growth eased. The latest growth figure is also the slowest in nearly 2 years, from the 4.8% in December of 2021. ING Bank Manila senior economist Nikki Mapa says slower bank lending was expected given the central bank's aggressive policy tightening. Recall that the BSP delivered a 25 basis point off-cycle rate hike last month after keeping the benchmark rate at a near 16-year high of 6.25% from March until October of this year. A recent Business World poll showed that 15 out of 18 analysts expect the central bank to maintain the 6.5% benchmark rate in their November 16 meeting. This follows the easing of inflation to a 3-month low of 4.9% in the month of October. Economists and bankers express confidence over Rafael Consing's appointment as president and CEO of the Maharlika Investment Corporation. Maricel Halili with this report.
Rafael Consing Jr. has been appointed by President Marcos as the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Maharlika Investment Corporation, which will manage Maharlika Investment Fund, or MIF. Consing is currently the Executive Director of the Office of the Presidential Advisor on Investment and Economic Affairs. He also served as Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of the private company International Container Terminal Services Incorporated, or ICTSI. Consing's appointment was announced just a few days after Malacanang released the revised Implementing Rules and Regulations, or IRR, of the Maharlika Investment Fund. Under the new IRR, the government removes additional qualifications for directors of the MIC. The old rules say that regular and independent directors must at least have a master's degree. They also removed the qualifications of a minimum of 10 years of professional experience in the field of finance, investments, economics, and related fields, as well as the required strong track record and commitment to the highest ethical standards. Also, under the revised IRR, the President has the power to approve or reject nominees of the advisory body for vacant positions. The original IRR only stated that the advisory board for nominees should be submitted to the Office of the President within 30 days after the release of the rules. One economist sees no problem with this move.
Yung appointment, nagagaling po sa executive, pero pagkatapos po nun, pag magpa-function na sila, independent sila. So nandoon naman po yung check and balances na tinatawag.
Albay Representative Joey Salceda also believes that Consing was an excellent choice for President and CEO of the MIC. Salceda was head of the technical working group that tackled the Maharlika Investment Fund Act.
Isa sa pinaka-excellent choice po ng Presidente at I'm sure na siya po may sapat na experience at kilala sa buong mundo. 32 countries po ang ICTSI, siya po ang CFO. Ang dami niya pong award sa pagiging Chief Financial Officer. Pero ang nag-number 1, yung walang masters. Si Joel Consing, kilala ko po yan at nakatrabaho na rin.
The revised IRR also removed specific functions and membership of the Maharlika Investment Corporation's Audit Committee. It also removed the provision that explains specific functions of the Risk Management Committee. Before the IRR was suspended, State Banks, Land Bank of the Philippines, and Development Bank of the Philippines have already remitted 50 billion and 25 billion respectively as initial capital of the MIF. A longtime banker points out that the general banking law states that the equity investment should not exceed 25% of the net worth of a universal bank, something he said is clear in the new IRR.
The money contribution of Land Bank and DBP will be transferred to their account in Treasury. At that point, it's still a deposit nila. Such investment needs the prior approval of the Monetary Board of the BSP. In which case, kung hindi nila i-stagger yan, if they send it to the BSP for approval, the BSP can only approve the equity investment na hindi magsosobra sa 25% of their equity.
For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
Now, while some welcome the appointment of Consing, others claim it was politicized. Here to weigh in, we have with us Dr. Leonardo Lanzona, professor and former chair of the Department of Economics over at the Ateneo de Manila. Hello, Prof, and welcome.
Good morning, Dan.
Prof, there's no question that Rafael Consing is a very seasoned banker with a lot of experience. However, some have reacted that the revisions to the IRR, particularly the fact that one no longer needs a master's degree to be able to be in the board position, was done to accommodate him. Your reaction to this, sir?
Well, I suppose he's a very experienced person, so to that extent, he would be qualified for the job. But I guess the bigger issue is, how beholden is he to the president himself? Given that, the new IRR has placed more power for the president to determine the composition of the board. It certainly politicizes the whole structure of the MIF. So, I mean, the whole question really is, how independent is he going to be for the president? The idea is he has worked with the president. He seems to owe the president a lot, and that might be an issue later.
All right, let's focus on that a little bit. We had another economist just reacting earlier on that this is the power of the president is for the composition, but after that the safeguards are still in place, particularly when it comes to safeguarding the money of the people. No, this comes from our taxes. Are you still okay with the changes in the IRR? Are the safeguards of the actual fund still in place, regardless of the fact that the president now has the power to accept and reject the positions?
Well, appointing a Supreme Court justice or appointing the BSP governor, that's different from appointing the chief CEO of the MIF, because the idea is that this company is supposed to act as if it was
Right.
a private firm. It has to compete not only with the other sovereign funds all over the world, but it has to compete with other private investment institutions. So it has to be seen as really very objective. It has to be seen as acting only in terms of focusing on economic fundamentals and not engaging in any kind of political considerations. And I think that's where education really matters as well, because education gives you the objectivity to look at things without any, I mean, the kind of discipline that an academic background will give you is something different from just doing your work on the job and getting certain lessons from experience. I think that if you have a better educational background, that will allow you to come up with better decisions, especially in cases where that are very challenging and that are very new given the situation.
So clear positioning on that, from your perspective. Let's go back to the whole onus and existence of this fund, which is set to be fully operational by the end of the year, with significant interest from investors abroad. At this point, now that it's composed, there's now a CEO, there's a go signal from the president. Are we okay with not having surplus funds from the budget to fund this? Are we okay now with, the 75 billion pesos coming from our government institutions? Is this something that we can now support?
Well, the problem with the new IRR is that it did not address the capacity of these, GIFs, these investment fund, agencies that we have, the government agencies that we have. Apparently, they have been asking for, regulatory reliefs after remitting the huge amounts of funds to the MIF. And so far, I haven't seen any response on how they are going to address this apparent incapacity of these institutions, to be able to meet the, to ensure that their operations are, would continue and be done properly. So there still remains that there's still that issue, unless perhaps we see some kind of financial statements from these institutions that they can, in fact, carry this burden. I think the problem will still be there, and I'm sure the foreign investors can see that.
Okay, sir, any changes because it was suspended, no? Because of this particular fact that you were mentioning that the capital tier ratios are not sufficient, they needed lifelines from the BSP. Has that been resolved? Because why is there a go signal now?
Well, I really don't know if they had resolved it. Or apparently they said, I think the BSP will be willing to give them that regulatory relief. But still, the main issue is, would they still be able to do their jobs? You've given this huge amount of money that they have.
Okay.
So I would think that a financial statement, some kind of, explaining what their reserves are, their capital assets, their assets and liabilities, would be a way of solving this particular issue.
Sir, another concern with the existence of this fund is the fact that we're, having a lot of financial issues here. We have, mounting debt in the trillions that we still need to pay for, and usually the countries that have these types of sovereign wealth funds come from surplus wealth, which we don't actually have. But it was touted by proponents, particularly, Secretary Diokno of the Finance Department, that this is something that, it's now or really never, because at the end of the day, we're never going to have surplus funds. And the time to invest while there is still some growth in the country is now. Is this okay with the, situation economically? Can we afford this?
I don't think that argument is actually valid. I mean, of course, we probably can't afford it now, but I'm sure if we do our jobs well, if we invest in more human capital, create more savings, eventually I think we'll reach that point. But to push this thing right now, in the midst of all of these, post-pandemic recovery difficulties that we're facing, it's just really wrong timing. But the idea is that we have the potential, but we can't do it right now. It's impossible to do it.
Okay, sir, on that note, last question before we let you go. Your thoughts on the general economy. I don't know how many more days we have left till Christmas, but we just reported loan growth slowing for the 6th straight month. 6.5% interest rates probably impacting that and the growth. We've got easing inflation, but we're seeing the holiday season come in. Give us an idea of the trends you're seeing, your year-end expectations.
Well, I think we can meet our inflation targets. No? I think the inflation target is around 5.6%. I think right now it's around 3.3%. But definitely, as far as growth targets go, I don't think we will be able to meet the 6 to 7%. The key issue is really the BSP, the BSP rates, no? that are being imposed. So it actually helps to tame the inflation, but the problem is that it also induces slower growth. So I think that's what's the more important factor. That does not mean that I'm against this BSP interest rate policy. I think it's there is a reason for that. Mainly because we're still facing all of these supply side constraints, and they want to quell whatever expectations that might happen as a result of this, these difficulties. So I think it's the right policy. And definitely, it has, in a sense, as I said, it has tamed inflation. But the government really needs to do something extraordinary to meet its growth targets.
What about consumption, sir, in the Christmas season compared to last year at least?
Well, I would think
Tough
that
year?
the consumption will remain as it is. So, but we wouldn't expect the same growth in consumption as before. In fact, in the third quarter, it has already decelerated, and it might continue to decelerate. But still, of course, we'll get through with Christmas.
Hopefully. Masaya pa rin naman yung Pasko. All right, thank you, sir. We'll have to leave it at that.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us, Professor Leonardo Lanzona, former chair of the Ateneo de Manila Department of Economics. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Dani Laurel. The Philippine Economic Zone Authority, or the PEZA, says many companies are now opting to relocate to the Philippines as their export hub to the US and Europe. Speaking on the big story, PEZA Director General Teresito Panga said that multinational corporations operating out of China are looking to take advantage of the generalized scheme of Preferences Plus. This is a trade preference that allows for the duty-free entry of Philippine products to Europe.
In the case of Chinese, we can be their ideal investment hub and manufacturing at that, because when they operate out of the Philippines and export to, say, US and Europe, they're able to enjoy GSP+. So this is a privilege if you locate in the Philippines. Among ASEAN, if you export to Europe, it's only in the Philippines that companies are able to enjoy zero duty on their exports.
Panga, meanwhile, reported that PEZA has achieved 85% of their investment for the year, 154 billion pesos. That is equivalent to 131 billion pesos in investments so far. PEZA is confident that they will meet or even exceed their targets by the end of the year, with a focus on sectors like electronics, IT, metals, and transport.
We're confident that we will achieve our target, probably even surpass our 154 billion pesos. We have 3 more board meetings to go. And as usual, the top sources of investments for PEZA are those coming from electronics, of course, the IT, the metals, and transport because of the EV.
And mall hours in the National Capital Region have been adjusted for the Christmas season. Starting today, November 14, mall hours will now be from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. The MMDA said the modified mall hours would be implemented to address the anticipated heavy traffic during the Christmas season. Mall-wide sales are allowed only on weekends. However, stores or outlets inside malls may offer sales on weekdays, provided that they do not make announcements or advertisements for them. Mall operators are also required to submit traffic management plans to the MMDA for their mall sales and promotional events 2 weeks earlier. And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Dani Laurel. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News, all sides, all the time.